A leading MAGA Republican in the U.S. Senate has introduced a bill to criminalize pornography. So much for the First Amendment, and so much for going after the important issues of the day, right? How is this bringing down the price of eggs? Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, a.k.a. the Florida LawMan, here on Legal AF. And yes, it's Senator Mike Lee, one of the top MAGA stars in Washington, D.C., U.S. Senator from Utah, along with a Congresswoman from Illinois, Congresswoman Mary Miller. I know it's going to surprise you, but they're both Republicans. They have unveiled new legislation, according to The Independent, that's called the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, IOTA, which seeks to stop the production and dissemination of pornographic material and to empower prosecutors to act against it by redefining the notion of obscenity for the internet era. According to the wording of the bill, which its authors say is consistent with the Communications Act of 1934, a piece of content is obscene if taken as a whole. It appeals to the prurient interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. I'm not going to go too much into this. This is a family show here on YouTube. We're talking about Legal AF, where we meet at the intersection of law, politics, and true crime. I think this topic, indeed, is at that intersection, I would think. But also, it's time to talk about subscriptions. Thank you for subscribing to Legal AF. You've gotten us over 600,000 subscribers. Thank you. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. And we're not going to barrage you with morality tales. Talk about morality tale. These guys in the U.S. Senate on the MAGA side, my gosh, whenever they protest too much, whenever they go out of their way to try to do something that's so extreme as to do something that's blatantly unconstitutional. This has been tried over and over again. Just look up Supreme Court jurisprudence. Remember the old saying, I'll know it when I see it? Yeah, that came from a pornography case. So that's a Supreme Court justice showing how tough it is really to define what is pornography, what is a violation of the First Amendment. I mean, this kind of thing is a road to nowhere. But I guess it wins some points with their constituents, perhaps. But I don't know. I always thought that the people who protest so much, who are out there trying to make all this stuff illegal, are the ones who probably don't want you to look under their beds or in their closets. But hey, I guess we haven't seen hypocrisy in this area before, have we? Senator Lee warned obscenity isn't protected by the First Amendment, but hazy and unenforceable legal definitions have allowed extreme pornography to saturate American society and reach countless children. By the way, they're not talking about the stuff that's abusive towards human trafficking victims, for example, and child exploitation. No, they're talking about just all the stuff that is and has been covered repeatedly over time, over and over again by the courts as protected First Amendment conduct. So according to Senator Lee, our bill updates the legal definition of obscenity for the internet age so this conduct can be taken down and its peddlers prosecuted, and he'll be the first one out there checking your computer screens. Representative Miller said that their legislation equips law enforcement with the tools they need to target and remove obscene material from the internet, which is alarmingly destructive and far outside the bounds of protected free speech under the Constitution. If this sounds familiar, it's because you saw it during the presidential campaign in Project 2025. You remember that whole project that was supposed to be fake news? Well, it's back, and it continues to show up in the Trump administration. According to The Independent, Lee and Miller's bill corresponds with the Heritage Foundation think tank's Project 2025 policy blueprint for the second Trump administration, much of which the president has already adopted despite his claiming during last year's presidential campaign to be unfamiliar with it. Yes, go after Americans' Pornhub and see how that goes. The foundation's mandate for leadership describes pornography as the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children. Now, again, the bill doesn't speak to child pornography. It's already illegal. It's treated very harshly by law enforcement and prosecutors, and rightly so. And also, the bill doesn't just single out the transgender community. That's another First Amendment issue, the drag queen bingos and all the things that go on that have been in litigation. We've seen it here in Florida with Governor DeSantis trying to crack down on some of the stuff when it when, for example, a drag queen bingo admits children. But the ability for people to express themselves, free expression, is in the Constitution. It's that amendment that's number 1. So that's where you have to start. You know, the one that's actually before the amendment that says right to bear arms. And as far as punishments, well, its authors argue that porn should be outlawed, its producers and distributors jailed, librarians who stock it classed as registered sex offenders, and tech companies that facilitate its spread shut down. Okay, so coming to a library near you, the librarian is now a registered sex offender, has to live 2,000 feet from a school and register online. Why? Because somewhere in that library could be some obscenity. Yeah, I know we're worried about threats to our democracy. Well, this is another part of the undermining of our freedoms. I thought the Republican Party was supposed to be about freedom. Here, it's looking in every bedroom, I guess, to see magazines they don't like, in every library, to jail the librarians who have something that they find distasteful. Well, keep in mind, about hypocrisy, according to The Independent, despite the public disapproval, the MAGA movement has often struggled to disassociate itself from the subject of porn, from adult film actress Stormy Daniels playing a central role in Trump's hush money trial last year, to Texas Senator Ted Cruz accidentally liking steamy tweets, and House Speaker Mike Johnson admitting that he and his son monitor each other's devices for exposure to X-rated content. Yeah, that was weird. But I would suspect that this bill has no chance of passing. I think it's a statement made, and can you imagine that Donald Trump signs this into law? First off, have to get through the filibuster in the Senate, have to pass through the House. Not even the House Republican majority is going to pass this thing. They're not going to touch it. It's radioactive. The fact that we're making fun of it here, shows that it ain't going to sell in Peoria. And as far as Supreme Court jurisprudence on pornography, I know I teased it earlier. There is the landmark case back in 1973 called Miller versus California. That is a U.S. Supreme Court decision that clarified the legal definition of obscenity as material that lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And they created a 3-part test. That is the law, even still, called the Miller test, to define what can be banned by government authorities. And in that 3-part test, you have the following. Number 1, it's whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. Number 2, whether the work depicts or describes in an offensive way sexual conduct or excretory functions as specifically defined by applicable state law. And 3, whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And in that Miller case, even back in 1973, against the standards back then, it was the defendant Miller whose criminal conviction was reversed, overturned, sent back to the state court for consideration of the test. So, I mean, this is why this stuff is going nowhere. It's because you have a test, you have laws in place, you have a history of individuals who are prosecuted under basic obscenity laws being let out of jail, being exonerated. I mean, remember a guy named Jim Morrison from The Doors? Yes, back here in South Florida, Miami, 1969. He was convicted for indecent exposure and profanity. It was an incident at a concert. He supposedly exposed himself at a concert. And after he was convicted, there was a lot of controversy. And years later, a clemency board in Florida conceded that there was inadequate evidence to convict Morrison. So these things don't go well generally in court, and they don't go well in the court of public opinion. So that's the latest here on the intersection of law, politics, and true crime. I'm Dave Aronberg, aka the Florida LawMan. Thank you for supporting Legal AF. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share with a friend, leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.